So let's navigate to the repo. We're looking for project 18, and then of course the setup folder. So I'm gonna go with CD, then I'm gonna grab my setup folder, and then we're gonna go with npm install, and then npm start as well. Once we navigate to the subfolder, more specifically source, we can see that we have app.js, where we'll set up most of our logic. Again, let me emphasize this, most of our logic. And also I'm going to have the follower, where I'm going to display that one follower. So notice the card that just shows the image, the name, as well as link back to the profile. That is going to be another component. Of course, we already have all the CSS for us. So that is in the index CSS. And then to speed us up a little bit, I went with use fetch. Now, please, if you need to go back tutorial where I covered how we can set up the custom hook, please do so, because since we need to set up the URL request, I just thought that we can speed this up by using the custom hook that we already created before. Now, I will go over the code though. So essentially we have loading and set loading, and then we have use state, and by default that is true. And then I have data and then set data. And I know that eventually it's going to be an array, but for the time being, I just have the empty array. Then I have my function get products, and that is async. So I set up my async await syntax, where of course we're using fetch API, and then I pass in the URL. So what is the URL representing? Well, if you just grab the string and then copy and paste, you'll notice that essentially this is coming from GitHub API, and then you can pass in whichever user you would want. Now, I would suggest user that has at least 100 followers, because of course our logic depends on that. So that's why I went with mine, but of course you can pass in whichever user you would want. And then more specifically, we're looking for followers. And then I added the URL parameter 100 per page, because of course I would want to get as many followers as possible, since it's just going to make our functionality more interesting. So I request it, and then I right away go with set data. So I add that array as my new state value, and I set loading to false. So I invoke it with use effect when the app renders. And then since that is my custom hook, I just go with loading and data. So those are the two things that I return from this custom hook. Now there's also utils.js, where we'll set up our paginate function. And then if you check out the app.js, we have one import, or more specifically two imports, I guess. We have use fetch, which is going to get the loading and our data, so our users. And also we have this follower component, which is responsible for rendering that one specific follower. That should be the setup. So now, of course, we can start typing our code.